Good day everyone, I'm David, the moderator for this webinar. I welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is Prepare Your Company to Meet the Final FSMA Rule Requirements for the Environmental Monitoring. I would now like to introduce our presenter for today, Dr. John Ryan. Dr. John Ryan is the president of RyanSystems.com and holds a PhD in Research and Statistical Methods. For more than 25 years, he has implemented quality control systems for international corporations in the United States and worldwide. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, John.
Thanks, David. Welcome, everybody. We're going to spend about 100 slides or a little more today going over environmental monitoring. So it doesn't matter where you are in the supply chain, this concept is required for you to work on it. All right, so different environments, farms, fields, packing houses, trucks, containers, distribution centers, processors, you name it. Your job is to figure out what your environment's like and figure out how to monitor it. And I'm going to talk about a lot of different technology, including Zigbee, location, identity, and condition, RFID. I did a lot of work with RFID with the Department of Agriculture in Hawaii when I was there. And then a lot of different softwares we'll talk about. And of course, your favorite, record keeping. Now remember, if you're collecting data, you got to set up a system to keep that data. And of course, we're going to talk about software too. So, all right, here's a little sample of microorganisms tested in 2012. FDA is holding these conference calls. If you're in government, you get to tap into them and listen to them. Both in this case, the U.S. and Mexico. And the FDA, I've been at several of their meetings over the years talking about water and produce and other samples, and they're notoriously weak when it comes to water sampling for biological contaminants. A new dependence on hard data. Now, what's hard data? And hard data comes from testing, chemical testing, environmental testing, et cetera, where that data is going into a lab and you're getting a number back. So that's going to be the bottom line on today's presentation, that no matter where you are in this food distribution system, the cost for doing that and the responsibility for doing that is yours. And I'm going to talk about Michael Taylor's statement in a minute. He was the FDA food safety czar. All right, so we have these problems, adulteration and hazards. What are they? Pests, insecticides, and chemicals. This is a big one that's going to come up in your future. Government's been focused a lot on bacteria, pathogens, etc. Food residues, intentional adulteration, economically motivated, paint chips, mold, other residues, spoilage, chemical extraction, and migration. So this one comes from your packaging, comes out of the packaging and into the food. Okay, so you have to do special testing of your packaging nowadays and collect hard data, test data, dirty processes. Hazard analysis, you've been through this, and risk-based preventive controls for human food. This is the start of all of our, in 2015, start of our FSMA rules. And of course, keeping your records and establishing a recall plan. So you're going to verify that private food safety management systems are working effectively to prevent problems. That's validation. So validation includes process design and qualification and continued process verification. You can't lie about the results of a sample. Okay, what's an environmental pathogen? This is what we're after. Pathogen capable of surviving and persisting within the whatever environment we're in. According to the rules, 117.4, environment holding, conveying, and manufacturing using closed on must be a design construction that enables them to be maintained in appropriate clean and sanitary conditions. Of course, sanitation controls that prevent hazards such as pathogens and biological hazards, do employee handling and food allergen hazards. This is an environmental control. Okay, just a quick touch on high-risk foods, because these types of things, whether they're or have a high-risk history, high recall history, or you find them in Codex Alimentarius as high-risk foods, have to be controlled. The hazard evaluation required by paragraph C1I of this section must include evaluation of environmental pathogens, product movement, map or flow chart the process, define the hazards, establish controls, develop procedures, set measurement points, and collect data. A lot of people like to forget transportation. I like to call it out. This is just a quick process that we use. A truck comes into a washer bay, it gets an initial inspection. All the farms we used, 10 of them, were voluntary, and they were either working in or had their food safety certification, GAP, premise labs, or some other standards. These are all conditions, indicators of drinking water or growing water quality. Coliform testing is a source of basic food safety audit requirement. Even with failed test results, a farm will pass the food safety audit. Next, okay, biofilms are alive and play host to all types of living. Now, I just showed you an example of a farm. Fouling has been identified as a major contributor to emitter clogging and drip irrigation systems. Farm irrigation systems, pipes, hoses provide warm, moist conditions, lets the biological contaminant grow. Even if the water is tested clean at the source, some level of contaminant which grows in biofilms, the right conditions, warm and moist. And a lot of things that don't work. Okay. Bottom line, preventing biofilms in farm watering systems, there's no known solution. The farms exhibited a relatively high degree of chemical, fecal, and E. coli contamination overall. Summary, with a relatively small number of farms sampled, but with extensive chemical and biological testing for contaminants, the following observations were made. Better management of water measurement and controls is needed if they are to reduce risk. Do a risk analysis. Do your planning and implement it. Come up with some procedures, sample and test. Keep your records because the feds want all your data. And then come up with corrective and preventive controls. Verify and validate. Here's an example of doing that kind of thing. Just a word about sampling, okay? I've kind of gone over it real quick. I showed you that 5-spot method, but your sample plan has to allow you to theorize about where things might be getting dirty. Now this shows some controls over collecting the data, and then of course you have to show that you've had control, complete control over that sample for the lab. It's called chain of custody, pesticide sampling. Okay, so we specified very carefully how to control our sampling. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a different kind of cross-contamination and from harvest bins and other kinds of cross-contaminant. Trucks and other produce carriers must be cleaned or even sanitized. A farm should have HACCP and critical control point plans, establish sampling procedures for water and produce, consider both biological and chemical sampling. This is not just for farms and distribution centers, etc. Okay, now suppose your distribution center is taking food in from a farm. Work with the suppliers to establish a test plan. They do it and you do it. Consider independent produce testing at your facility. In short, do the testing and the monitoring. Keep it under control. Train your people. Make sure you do the right sampling procedures, the right amount, the right times, and you budget for it all. Now, here comes the stuff you love. Documentation and record keeping. Statistical stuff can be done on laptop, cell phone, or with an iPad. You get instant scoring and reporting. You reduce paperwork and eliminate. Records are easily updatable. You have better control over it. Internal documents are available for external auditors. In transportation, you have what's called a contract of carriage, so an agreement between the shipper and the people shipping or receiving the product. Now I'm going to talk about some technology. I started earlier, I said draw a map of your operation, where you might get a quick start. Adenosine triphosphate. It's a 1-minute test for an energy molecule found in living cells. This is just a procedure for ATP swabbing for shipping containers. This is a more sophisticated. Instant Labs comes out with, you take the samples for E. coli, et cetera, in your own facility rather than sending it to a lab. Get to know your local lab and their required procedures. Just a quick talk about traceability now. Many other types that are available: temperature, explosives, bacterial contaminant, shipper sales order, and invoice, and then that data gets shipped out through ArcNav and GPS, GMS systems. Here's some of those devices. This is the one that goes in the truck. Different kinds of tags available. It's the RFID reader, RFID tags. Here's one on the back of a container. Same with traceability records, temperature, humidity, monitoring, location and time, security seal, light exposure, sanitation records, ATP test. That's that little handheld $2 test record for your trucks, and wash records. Okay, so bottom line here, I'm coming to the end. Don't forget the analytics, all right? Converting raw data into understandable information. What does that mean? Thanks for attending today, and hopefully see you in the extended presentation we're going to do sometime early in the year. All right, thanks folks. Thanks for attending. And environmental monitoring covers a lot of stuff. It's time for you to get going on it, and good luck. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That'll conclude the session for today. Thank you everyone for participating. You may all disconnect now.